Okay, here's one of these pictures. Short of having the name already on the video, we could ask where we at. For with just a simplistic small amount of change, we could make this of many different people that you know of and are running through your mind right now. If I was to make the sail not all red but striped, would that help or even still give you more problems? Because all the ones you're thinking of utilize this coloration and form. Where are we at? Looking at the boat here, you can see the prow of it and the underbuilt part of it, not necessarily the side build-ons that it looks like it has here, and it seems somewhat like that Egyptian solar boat. But it's been built upon, and then it has a secondary level that goes way out over the water on either side here of it. Shields around on it, crosses on it, which are really swords, by the way. But the prow of this boat doesn't necessarily have a dragon on it or anything, and that may not help either, because we know the Phoenicians, who you might be thinking of, had this ideal, but also all the Vikings and Danish ships and things like that. In fact, incredibly similar shipbuilding, incredibly similar people, aspects, and so on. So where are we at? Are we having left Phoenicia and we're pulling up to the islands in Argos and the Aegean Sea someplace? Doing something like the Iliad and the Odyssey, perhaps, around the Mediterranean? Massive trade? Are we perhaps just about to leave out the Pillar of Hercules on a greater quest to other islands? Are we in a Danish fjord? Or are we leaving a Danish fjord on a larger quest? Are we entering a fjord in the Americas in an ancient time that can be found? There are an ever-growing number of artifacts showing that there was connectives to the United States many times. We find the Viking settlements and so on, but it seems to leave off after there. They don't know where the people went to or whatever. But there are other artifacts showing you that they came far inland, and that this picture right here could be them coming down the Delaware and the Hudson and going down through deeper, leading to things like the Kinsington runestones that we've heard so much about, I've done videos on before, or the placard that Glenn Beck apparently got fired for, which he tried to claim was Hebrew, but it was really ancient Phoenician writing. Or the Magna Puenta bowl that was found in South American artifacts, which has Sumerian writing on it, even god symbols and so on, that most people want to dismiss, along with Dr. Cresby's, or Padre Cresby's, collection that he has there. For you can see a lot of things like modern guitars and stuff like that are built into it, but some of those things show some knowledge that even these people wouldn't have been aware of, that were supposedly handing things into him. Let's get into this, for this is just another piece of the information showing you that, well, before the time of Columbus, it was well known. And we're going through Columbus Day, which has just been renamed here in America, by the way, also tagging upon it Native American Day, which I personally always thought was encompassed in the idea of Thanksgiving. But instead of picking one of 364 other days, we decided it was shit on Columbus Day. So, pre-Columbian Latin text proves early knowledge of the Americas. The accepted mainstream story has long been that no one in the southern or western Europe knew anything about the Americas before the discoveries associated with the voyages of Columbus. But a new translation of rare medieval Latin text, which was composed by an Italian monk, shows that this perception was inaccurate. In the ancient 14th century book, mention is made of a far-off land known as Merculata, which was previously discovered by Scandinavian explorers apparently. Given the overall context of the passages, it is clear that the writer is referring to either Labrador or Newfoundland on Canada's northeastern coast, or perhaps even more southern, as we might see on a map shortly. This means that there were people in Italy that knew about the North American continent more than 150 years before Columbus ever set sail. See if I can give a moment of clarity here. You're taught that they thought the world was flat and that they would fall off the end of the earth, and that for some reason the queen there gave him a bunch of ships and all kinds of stuff just to sail off the ends of the earth, and if they never came back, they would knew that they fell off the ends of the earth. Is that, and would giggle about it? Is that what you want to go with? Remarkable about that dating, because it's at the end of the whole Inquisition type of time, and these people were about to be either killed or forcibly removed from the country on the exact date that this thing was set to set sail. I've shown repeatedly that the ancient Greeks knew that the world was round. The whole concept of gravity that Newton went through and everything also shows it. But I've also showed that the ancient Sumerians knew it well, and that's the reason we still have 360 degrees in a circle. And the declination of how the sun falls per year and everything, which led to a whole lot of mythologies that we've talked about. I tell you now that Columbus, when he was supposedly going to India, knew exactly who he was probably going to find in there ruling India. And so coming over and seeing swastikas and things like that, it showed you that there was something going on, but the ruling class or the people he expected to be here were not found. Later Pizarro came in and they said, you're the one that came back. You, because you have a beard, whenever none of the locals have a beard in Quetzalcoatl. And they even have all these statues and everything that shows you they already had the idea of this bearded guy, blue eyes, light hair, and the whole 9-yard ideas from the Wayback Machine. He even saw a girl there with blonde hair and asked him about it, and she said he was told that she was one of the last of the children of the gods. They took them to a burial ground where they had some of them, and they took some of their heads and so on, and they're still in the South American Museum to this day. I've showed them in a lot of videos. A lot of people have shown this. But maybe some people were duped into thinking that the world was flat somehow at that time, but the people that were in conjunction with this knew that it wasn't. You can look at old Ptolemaic maps, and in fact the map that will come up on here shortly, and you'll realize that they're declimating around the ball here, the actual sphere of the earth. This amazing discovery was made by Milan University Professor Paolo Chisa, who specializes in the study of medieval literature, and several graduate students who helped him examine and translate an ancient Italian manuscript in Latin known as Cronica Universalis. This is the Chronicles of the Universe, or we still have that name Chronos attached to it, and the universe. The book was written sometimes between 1339 and 1345 by a Dominican monk named Galvano Fiamma, and it contained a passage in Latin that revealed knowledge of lands that could be reached by sailing west across the Atlantic. This included a huge and expansive landmass known as Marcolata, which was said to have been discovered but never deeply explored. There's supposed to be a picture right there, but a better picture here, for this is a page out of the manuscript, and you can see its filigree around it, and the star representations around on it, and so on, and leaves that go on with this pattern. But that's a photograph from the page of a Latin text from that 18th century monk known as Galvano Fiamma. Fiamma's amazing Latin text is backed up by Icelandic sources, though. In an article to the historic journal Terra Incognita, or the Secrets of the Earth, Professor Kesa refers to Fiamma's newly translated disclosure as astonishing, as added proof that the monk was really talking about North America. Professor Kesa notes that of statements and stories obtained from ancient Icelandic sources which mention a land called Markland that had been previously identified by scholars as referring to the northeastern coast of modern-day Canada. The rare copy of Fiamma's book is currently owned by a private collector from New York who gave Professor Kesa permission to take photographs of the book and its contents while completing a cover-to-cover Latin translation. One of Kesa's graduate students found the paragraph that contains this critical reference. Fiamma's passage sets up its revelation by first noting the success of the European sailors who had reached Greenland and Iceland centuries before. Then he wrote the following. Need storage? No, that's not what he wrote. He wrote, farther westwards, there's another land. Farther westwards of these two that he had spoken of, named Marcolata, where giants live in this land. There are buildings with such huge slabs of stone that nobody could build them except huge giants. There are also green trees, animals, and a great quantity of birds. This description shows you that it was much farther south and not necessarily so Icelandic, so Arctic Circle. And again, from the point that they come down and have made these settlements, they say, but yet farther down and to the west here, apparently. Green trees, lots of birds. Doesn't sound like it's too explored, though. Perhaps the people that have gotten back this idea were not the ones who had ventured in further. The fear is the people that ventured in further never came back. Probably ran into a pack of natives. The monk explained that he got the knowledge of Marcolata from sailors who frequent the seas of Denmark and Norway. This makes it easy to credit the discovery of western lands to the Norse or Viking stories of adventure and conquest, which could have been passed down through these 14th century Scandinavian sailors, and they in turn could have relayed the tales to Italian seamen they encountered in the port of Genoa. Genoa, incredibly, is where we say Columbus comes from. According to Professor Kesa, the mention of giants plays a common motif in Norse mythology and folklore, which I've spoke about frequently. Since the interior lands of North America and their possible inhabitants remained unknown, it could have been easy for individuals landing in the 4th to 10th century to imagine that monsters, exotic creatures, or extraordinary humans might have lived there. You see that on maps going out, but then a lot of times we found out that some of those ancient maps, the Phoenicians and types like this, are telling you that don't go here, there's dragons. Whoa, don't go here, there's that. Well, that shows you that they had been there. Some of their mythologies tell you how they got past things and so on like that. But that was also trying to steer anybody else from trying to do it. They were putting it out like, oh man, don't go out there. Where? where we go all the time. See, that's our thing. So if you go out there, we're going to kill you out in the sea and you'll never come back. And people will be like, wow, must have been caught by a dragon. Do not go in those waters. How could I lose the page just sitting there that simple? Let's see if I can get it to reload easily. So you get this conceptive of these people around the 13th century that already knew about it well, let us say, right? And that this is something that apparently has gotten passed around by sailors, right? And some of their secrets. You know, there's an ancient tale. I don't want to go into it totally. Maybe I'll do a separate video about it. You've often seen in depictions in movies where there's a guy and he's got a tattoo on him and it's on his back. And it was put on him long ago, and in growing up, it kind of got smeared or looking funny, but he can't even see it himself. But he's been kept for some reason. And then suddenly that person's used, right? That story dovetails into the idea of the Nina and the Pinta and the Santa Maria. Yeah, strangely. And then another aspect of that idea is this finding that's right here. Because it was tales like that that apparently Columbus had heard enough of to make him believe that you can go that way and run right back into it too. First leeward outward islands are probably going to be natives and so on, and much more primitive people, but there's got to be a big city in there and so on, and da-da-da. I'm going to try to find it. City of Gold. So this amazing discovery was made by Milan University Professor Paul Kisa, as we said, who specializes in the study of medieval Latin literature, and several graduate students who helped him examine and translate an ancient Italian manuscript known as Cronica Universalis. So this land known as Mercata, here's one of the pages again. Having trouble loading. So it's a common motif with giants being perhaps mentioned in here, and then also the idea that you don't want to go there if anybody hears the story. For they're only telling you a limited story because the others didn't make it back, you see. In the Cronica Universalis, Galvano Fiamma confirmed that the ancient sailors didn't know much at all about the true features of that western lands. Therefore, they could only speculate about what they might have found had they traveled farther inland. That speculation led to an idea of giants, though. And you can tell in Indian folklore they had tales of giants and so on too, but that's for another video. Here we see a stamp from Canada that commemorates this idea of the Vikings having sailed westward. Les Vikings navigation first. 34-cent stamp, and you can see a Viking type ship, and then you see a bird too that's represented with this. For they used to, with maritime, used to take birds and let them loose, and a bird would fly up and then see land in the distance. If not, he would know there's no land and come back to the ship. If there was land, it may or may not come back. If you let out one bird that was a pair of other birds already nesting that you had there together, and let one out, if it did find something, it would come back, sometimes bringing a stick. This is a story in your Bible where it just comes out of nowhere. Why is he throwing birds out and all this type thing? Well, because way before that, this idea had already been reached. Pretty cool looking stamp, though. But you can see how this comes out and has that warble and this thing that sticks out like Florida and so on in these other lands. Well, we're talked about Newfoundland and how they had found these places here off Iceland, but with Mercator, we're talking about way down here on the map that they'll show here shortly. And that reveals that it's something very much lower than that, Nova Scotia and so on. I'll talk about it more when we get there. The Vikings in North America. It's now established beyond any doubt that the Norse sailors reached the eastern Atlantic Ocean and the lands that could be found here in the late 10th century. They formed settlements in Greenland that were occupied for 500 years, which endured even after the age of the Vikings had passed. So many years before Columbus, 500 if you will, their entrance to the North American continent may have been taken place at a site of the northern coast of Newfoundland known as L'Anse aux Meadows. This is the site that you see where they're almost like hobbit houses built in to the land, so it helps hold the warmth and things like that. But this represents the lone Norse site found anywhere in the North American continent, although there has been another one revealed that doesn't look like it was anywhere near as elaborate, and people have found that. And then there are other ones on the northeast coast of America which cannot be attributed to Indians because there are these stone houses built much like this, slab tops and things like that on them, which looks a lot more like Scarborough and places like that than any other Indian settlement. Now, of course, there are very many different types of Indians that had different things going on, but no one ever did anything like that. Sacred geometry, laying out squares and circles and all of this. Evidence reveals the Vikings didn't stay in this spot too long, abandoning it long before they had opportunity to expand inward. Norse ships may have continued to land on Newfoundland or elsewhere for some time, but if they did, likely stayed there just long enough to collect timber and other valuable supplies. Well, it's likely that they never really came back. One could believe that they got absorbed in somehow, and this is some of the reason why you might find the Mandan Sioux had blonde hair pre-Columbus and blue eyes in some of their variations. But then again, that whole Clovis idea and the Indians has been shattered so long ago. I recently did a video showing you that literally more than double that date has been found now of just footprints. But also dating to around that time, supposedly they couldn't have made it across this land bridge or anything because that was the corridor, remember? And what these people look like and correlate to are Solutreans, which come from Europe, and a derived Cro-Magnon eventual with huge spear points and so on, fighting the same type of mammoths and animals like that. And lo and behold, around the same time, you find these points in America. You even have the Smithsonian Institution with one of their experts and another man from Exeter University going together on the idea and proving it outright, and they still want to try to dismiss it. But because these people are who they are, they're not really just shoved off and lost their job and you never heard about it. Dennis Stanford. Look up Dennis Stanford Conference. I forget the number of the conference there, and he literally goes into it. One other thing, one of these Solutrean blades has been shown to have been made out of a weird type of flint material. So they zap it with their electron thing and find out, oh, this is the same type that we found over here with these Spain Solutrean points too. Perhaps they carried one all the way there. Only thing with this is it's off the coast of the Americas here in North Carolina and so on, which there's a continental shelf out there, but that didn't used to be a shelf. Whenever the sea was at its lowest points, land used to go all the way out to there, and mammoths are found and all of these people that are there. A lot of remnants. Only way we might find this, though, is going out there with real good submersible subs with grabbers and things like that, and, deep divers that are using special equipment and so on. Kind of a weird environment in the first place. Because their connection to the North American continent was so tenuous, historians have never been certain if Viking landings were there known outside of Scandinavia. Knowledge about this episode of Norse history might have been confined to a relatively small number of people in limited geographic region, it is believed. Well, some people were the in crowd and they knew about it. How about they knew about it all this time and they're waiting until they could kick the people out of Spain that had gone there and attain it back to themselves, because you'll find out real short amount of time after that happens there and they're kicked out good. Are they gone? Gone? Really gone? Gone? Let's go. But now it's obvious that people outside of Norway and Denmark actually knew about the Viking landings in Newfoundland. Stories about these times didn't necessarily include accurate or extensive details. A lot of times secrets and weird things, and there's dragons or giants. But the basic memory of Viking accomplishments and discovery was passed down at least as far as the 14th century in parts of Europe that were far away from this Scandinavia. Lo and behold, here we're looking at a map. Other than the names that are mentioned here, I want you to note that around on the map they have letters. Like up here they have F, E, D, A, B, C that's coming up here and we're looking at. And so as we come down here, what we're seeing is Friesland that's here. And all of these little islands that are connected up to it. And there's Ireland. And this is Britannia right there. Now it tells you here Stur, which that's the name for Saturn, so I wonder if that has to do with anything with this. But this is Terram Hyperborea. Says it right there. And so this is like 1579. So this is after they had gotten back and so on. But now no one was going up over there. This was all going, they weren't even hitting North America. They were getting slapped down into South America and the islands that are there in between. Then they, carrying it north, made it to Florida, right? Here's a map that's showing you this area and this Cronenland here that's here. And by the way, if you look in ancient maps, they'll tell you this is the Cronus Sea. So you think of Cronus as being this one thing, and actually they have a name for that. But here it's called the Mare Glacial. So the frozen sea, right? It's frozen up above them there. This island here that's well declimated. Names here and names here. And then people have looked at that. Why does it keep doing this? People have looked at that and they've said, you know, that's where they made their settlements at, Greenland and Iceland and so on. So what's this other part here to the left that we're actually looking at? Because it looks a little conspicuous. Wait till we get that again and I'll see if I can't elaborate on it just a little more. So that's a map made by 1570 by an Icelandic teacher showing Greenland and this Markland on the Canadian coast. Let's get in here a little bit onto it, and you're going to see that they have this land there on the left with a knob sticking out, and it's known as Helluland. It was a promontory kind of thing that was sticking out there. And we've talked about hell and where that whole idea comes from, and that's not really in the Bible or the name of it or anything, so where we get this concepts from. But even farther south of that, we're seeing over here, Helluland, Markland. Mark's land, or the mark, whenever you put a mark on a land, X marks the spot. That's the mark. Below we find Skraeland's land here, where you see A and B. So surely with A, B, and C, and D, and E, they knew where these places were and what these were, and so on. Strange thing here is it doesn't correlate exactly to a shore, but you can see on the map how they're declimating, longitude and latitude here on the map, and declimating it out. But strangely, this would actually be pivoted out over off the edge of the screen. And then we're not seeing here is the idea of Maine in New York, and the little thump that's supposed to be sticking out here, prominent, coming out like the big giraffe neck that it is, and then coming back in. Apparently that would be just below where we're at. But if we look at these longitude and latitude lines and go across from where Britain is to where this is over here, should be somewhere right here off the edge of the map, huh? Did Columbus and others know about Marcolata? The discovery of the revealing passage in the Chronica Universalis raises a fascinating question: just how widespread was knowledge of the North American continent and other western lands to medieval Europe? Galvano Fiamma likely acquired his knowledge while studying in Genoa, but he's certainly not the only one to be exposed to these stories. How far do they go back? Well, we definitely know about the Viking situation at 1,000, right? So 1,000 years ago, cutting the timeline in half, really, less. But, well, from a modern day, but from 1492, 1,500, really 1,000, so 500 years before that. But could it have been known by anybody else, like the Phoenicians and other people? For there's been so many other artifacts. And then we can even make the jump and go, before you even talk about Amerindians, there's been artifacts found that are not even those people. That they weren't the first. And in fact, there's showings of mammoths at 130,000 years that were worked by somebody who was able to work a carcass, and it wasn't just gnawing of teeth. They're well aware of what that looks like in comparison. Perhaps most who heard about the gigantic land masses in the frigid Arctic simply assumed they were myths or folk tales and not worth taking seriously. It's possible that only a few Norwegian and Danish sailors chose to share these legends, meaning they wouldn't have been common knowledge. Do you think this uncommon knowledge was spoken before he got on the boats and left? Or was he being kicked out, basically, and lucky to have gotten the boats, and everybody thought he was probably going to hug this way or that way, and if he was going out there, he's going to fall off the end of the earth? Whoopsie. It's possible that the knowledge about North America's existence was relatively widespread at the time, and in the future scholars will uncover more evidence in old texts to prove this to be true. Of course, if tales of Marcolata were being shared in the 14th century and beyond, it's possible they circulated long enough for Columbus, supposedly a Genoa native, to have heard them. Such tales might have been an unacknowledged inspiration for this 15th century explorer, who for a long time was incorrectly credited as the first to make landfall in the Americas. Well, he's still the one in modern time that did it and did anything about it, and I'm just about tired of people trying to shit on Columbus and say, oh, they went around raping people and stuff. You can actually look in his journal, which wasn't written for propaganda. It's his journal, talking about how he made sure that they didn't do so. Well, did some of it still happen? Sure, but it wasn't the rampant thing that you're talking about. Also, he got people together with the Arawaks and the others. One was cannibalizing the other and tried to fix the situation because the others were begging him for their help. For they made them mine gold and stuff, and if they wouldn't do it, they were going to kill them and eat them. And so it was this juxtaposition that went on. It was terrible. People don't find out or know anything about that, or the horrors of some of the things went over there. Somehow they want to believe that they were hippies running around with flowers in their hair and stuff, and it's really far from the reality of what was going on. The fact that no maps have been recovered from this time include the North American continent suggests its existence was only known about in limited circles, special people, or was considered only a rumor or a folk tale, regardless of the paragraph recorded by Galvano Fiamma in the Cronica Universalis. Lets us know that the first European discoveries of America did pass on stories about what they'd seen, and knowledge of their accomplishments did in fact reach distant ports. So, again, I don't know what this is. If we really were to look at it, people, and say, well, Riceland, Vinland, Vinlandia. What is this? Well, there's wine that's there. Is it possible they left out the knob and that Helluland or Markland was that New York Nova Scotia land, which actually means New Scotland? Nova Scotia. And that Vieslandia was down a little farther south than that berries are known to grow rampantly. And maybe that the projected idea of this person drawing a map and this thing that poked back up at this promontory are the main blueberries and all this that they talk about, which look like grapes, and this concept is there, but maybe that promontory that it says written on it was something totally different, and by trying to interpret it and come up with your own idea, doesn't look like the map of the land that we know today, because the person drawing the ideal was going off what other people had said and never really, how big is that promontory, didn't have that, but that's where it has berries and wine, like Knott's Berry Farm or places, Kennebunkport, and all these ideas up in there. Well, there's huge amounts of berries per year and so long, and then of course Skraeling that goes along with it shows you something else. I don't know if you were to add up all the ones that are not just everything that people say and try to put at it, but ones that seem to have a viable aspect to them, that if we're at 16, 17, 18, 21, where the hell are we at on the amount of showing you not only that it happened at this time in the Vikings, but another time, and people are telling you about it here before it was supposedly known of. But other evidences that are found in here, and if you start adding it up, if it wasn't the thing that we're talking about, with people having such a dogma about the thing that we're talking about, it had been pretty well accepted a long time ago. Funny how in a modern day they find this Chinese thing and they all want to jump on it and go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just like that placard. Even churches were getting all in it. Huh? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it's ancient Hebrew. No, well, it's ancient Phoenician. I didn't even hear about what you said then. Oopsie. Read the Bible and see if those are seafaring people or who we were talking about. Let me know what you think downstairs. We'll get on to another one here. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't. And check the bell. Everybody's losing it. So check and make sure you've got the bell on. For if you don't have it on, give me every time that a video comes out. You almost never get them. Peace.